Iran just fired its largest missile barrage at Israel in weeks, targeting the country's most populated areas during Passover. Millions of Israelis spent the holiday in bomb shelters. An 11-year-old girl is fighting for her life. And here is the part the headline numbers do not tell you. The Israeli military is now deliberately not intercepting roughly half the incoming missiles. That is not a failure. That is a deliberate strategic decision, and understanding why tells you everything about where this conflict is actually heading. In the last 48 hours alone, Iran fired approximately 20 ballistic missiles at central Israel. At least 2 carried cluster warheads that scattered bomblets across residential areas of central Israel, wounding several people, including 2 infants in Bnei Brak and a 12-year-old girl hit by shrapnel who remains in critical condition. Emergency services responded to at least 11 confirmed impact sites. At the same time, Hezbollah launched rockets from Lebanon, triggering sirens near Haifa, while the Houthis in Yemen launched additional missiles. All 3 fronts activated simultaneously during the first night of Passover, the most widely observed Jewish holiday of the year. The IDF confirmed that around half of those 20 missiles were intercepted and half were intentionally allowed to land in open areas according to what the military calls protocol. The reason is interceptor conservation. Israel has a finite stockpile of Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow interceptors, each costing between $50,000 and $3.5 million per unit. Iran has now fired over 400 ballistic missiles at Israeli territory since this conflict began. Roughly half of those have been equipped with cluster warheads. When a missile carries a cluster warhead, intercepting the missile body does not necessarily stop the bomblets from dispersing, because the submunitions can release before or during the interception.
רק שמירת.
Missile defense expert Tal Inbar described it plainly. It is a mechanism to bypass active missile defense. When those missiles are heading for open ground, Israel's calculus is to let them land and save the interceptors for missiles aimed at populated infrastructure. But the margins are tight, and the sirens do not always give civilians the 90 seconds they are supposed to have. That is how a couple in their 70s were found dead outside their safe room in Ramat Gan after a cluster strike. They had a shelter. They ran out of time to reach it. The Iranian use of cluster warheads is deliberate and documented. Each cluster missile releases between 24 and 80 individual bomblets across a blast radius that can stretch up to 6 miles. The Arms Control Association confirmed Iran is launching them specifically into residential areas. The IDF confirmed their use on the very first day of the conflict. Amnesty International called it a flagrant violation of international humanitarian law. Iran is not a signatory to the Convention on Cluster Munitions, which over 100 countries have signed. Neither is the United States nor Israel. What Iran has done is take a banned by treaty weapon, integrate it into roughly half its ballistic missile inventory, and use it to convert one missile into dozens of near impossible to intercept projectiles spread across miles of civilian neighborhoods. The IDF publicly confirmed this week that its interception rate against full ballistic missiles heading for populated areas stands at 90 to 92%. Against the bomblets released from cluster warheads, no comparable figure has been given because the intercept problem is fundamentally different. The bomblets are small, fast, dispersed at high altitude, and fall across areas too wide for targeted interceptions to be consistently effective. Israel's Home Front Command has now instructed civilians not to approach unexploded ordnance on the ground after any missile strike, because submunitions that fail to detonate on impact remain live. and can kill or maim days or weeks later. On the Israeli offensive side, the IAF carried out over 400 strikes on Iran in the past 2 days alone, dropping more than 650 munitions on ballistic missile launchers, air defense systems, missile manufacturing and storage sites. The IDF says it has destroyed approximately 85% of Iran's air defense and detection systems. The Pentagon says it has degraded roughly 90% of Iran's overall ballistic missile and drone capabilities. Iran's Air GC says it has fired over 500 ballistic missiles and nearly 2,000 drones since the conflict began, and the pace has dropped sharply from the roughly 90 fired on the first day to the current rate of 10 to 20 per day. Whether that drop reflects successful suppression of launchers or deliberate conservation of a depleted stockpile is the central intelligence question of the conflict right now. The IDF assesses Iran still has approximately 1,000 ballistic missiles remaining. On the diplomatic side, Trump addressed the nation saying the US is close to achieving its objectives, then separately posted that the US would bomb Iran back to the Stone Ages if Iran did not reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's Revolutionary Guards responded by threatening crushing attacks on both the US and Israel. Iran rejected a 15-point US peace proposal. Tehran also insists any ceasefire must include an end to Israeli operations in Lebanon, which effectively links the two conflicts and makes a standalone ceasefire in either theater nearly impossible. The World Bank expressed extreme concern about the war's impact on global inflation, food security, and employment. Oil prices jumped over 7% after Trump's latest statements. An Amazon cloud computing facility in Bahrain was damaged in an Iranian strike. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 1/5 of the world's oil normally passes, remains closed to Israeli and US-allied shipping. The confirmed death toll inside Israel stands at 22 civilians and 9 IDF soldiers killed since the conflict began, with over 6,000 in Iran. Preliminary figures put civilian deaths in the thousands, with human rights monitors estimating at least 15% of total casualties were under 18. 11 US soldiers have been killed across the region. What the numbers do not capture is what Passover looked like in Israel this week. Families hosting the Seder meal in underground parking garages converted into public shelters, sirens interrupting prayers, an 11-year-old girl in a hospital with shrapnel injuries to her legs, 2 infants treated for glass wounds from a cluster strike in a residential street. The Western Wall and Al-Aqsa Mosque compound were both closed for the holiday. The Passover priestly blessing, which normally draws tens of thousands, was held with a minimal prayer quorum. Iran chose Passover for its largest barrage in weeks. That was not a coincidence.